Hello and welcome back. This is part two of how to create a welcome screen to an Android game app you're developing. If you followed me for part one, this is part two. We were creating the welcome screen itself. As you can see, we changed, if you were following the first one, we changed the background color black. We changed the text to red. We changed the text to say kill them all, the title of our game. We moved it and we centered it, and we changed the text size. Let's go back to the welcome screen. Let's go back to the bottom. Down here, the graphical layout tab, let's look at the welcome screen tab, XML, to look at the code again. Again, you could change things here if you want, and you could do it by hand. You could change this to, say, 42 SP, and then if you click the graphical page, you see that the Kill Them All screen has increased. If you click on the text, you look at the property boxes, you notice that the text size did change to what you had on a text box. So you could do everything by hand. I'm just showing you that what you do in the box, you could do it by hand. But we're going to, again, you could go and learn XML on your own. Let's click on the tab, get back to the XML code page. We're going to change this back to what we had it before, which is 23 SP. And let's go back to the graphical layout page, and as you can see, it's back to where we had it. It's fine. So I just want to show you that you could change things by hand or by the boxes, but you got to learn the XML code yourself and all the options that you have to change things. Now that we've gotten this far, now we're looking to make the buttons. We got everything running right. We just want to change the buttons. So what we're going to do is we're going to come over here to the left. We're going to see a button. So you got big button, small button. I'm going to click on the small button, and I'm going to click and drag it to my work area. As you can see, the familiar reference lines showed up. There's one reference line that's referencing it up to the top of the text, and one reference line is pointing to the bottom saying these are your reference lines. If you let this, now there's a way this helps you and hurts you. If you let it go, it's going to reference perfectly like that. The problem is, if this button grows, it's going to try to force you to stay with these reference lines. It's saying you wanted these, we're not going to let this button go beyond the right side of this reference line or go lower unless we really have to. So let's change this. As you notice, the button's been created. It has the default text of button. And if you notice at the bottom, there's a warning sign already on it. And if you hover it over it, if you read at the warning, it will say something to should use resources. So they put button in there, but they didn't make a string for you. So that it's saying you should use it. Again, it'll work, but let's go back to the property. As you see it selected, go to the property boxes, and you see that if you go down 4 boxes, you see that, hey, there's the text and there's the button text. We're going to change that. Before I do, look at the box up here. It says ID. The first box says ID, and it says add ID / button 1. This is the reference to this button. When we go longer in the process, we're going to need to know what these ID numbers are, because when you start adding functionality to these buttons, you need to reference the ID number so that the way the software knows which button you're working with. But you can write them down somewhere. I'll show you where to find them later on when we start that process of the coding. That's going to be, I think, in the tutorial 3 or 4. But right now, we're just going to change the text in here. We're going to highlight that, and we're going to say, okay, it wants a string, so let's hit delete like we did before. Now let's go back to what we did before. Go to the box, small box at the end of that box with the 3 dots, and we're going to click on that once to activate it, and another time to bring up the resource chooser. And then we're going to say, well, we want this to have its unique string, and we know it hasn't been created. And of course, so we see there's no button in there, so we're going to create it. Now, if you see more than one string of that I have that you don't have, I think it's just because something I did before and I did delete that string, so don't worry about it. But what you want to do is create a new string here. Go down to the new string button that we did before, click on it, bring up this little wizard box. You're going to click on the first one. Now, what do we want the button to say? Well, our mock-up said it was called launch, capital L, game, and that's what we wanted to say. That's the value of the string. Now, what we're going to call this string? I'll call this button, and then underline, and then launch game. No spaces, all lowercase. And that way I know this is the string for the button that launched the game button, and the value is launch game. Let's hit OK. Now that we go down here, we look at the big box, see if we can find here it is, button launch game. Click on it, select it, and click OK. Now we're back at the work area. You'll notice that the launch game has been created. But unlike the mock-up, the launch game is not right next to each other. Game is underneath launch, and we don't want that. And that's because this reference is forcing it to stay within this reference line And that's not what we want. We don't want to be, we wanted a longer one. So the way you do that is you're going to go to this resize box till you get the double arrow, and we're going to just expand it to the right till you break that reference line. And then you can let it go. And as you can see now, the button looks like our mock-up, which just says launch game in one line. And that's what I mean with this. Sometimes these reference lines, these alignment reference lines throw you off because they're trying to force it. But so you have to move things around so you can break those reference lines before you let it go and see if the button does what it does. Sometimes it just shoots across the screen. It goes crazy. So it's a blessing and a curse. But this looks good right now. We know we're going to click on, we know the button selected because we've got the resize boxes still showing. We go to the property boxes and we say, okay, let's look at that. Yep, the ID number is still 1. Remember, we got to reference that later on when we start coding more. And the text says right here, it says what? String / button launch game. So there it is. We created the next button. So now let's do another button. We did that one. We know there's 2 buttons. So let's go back to the form widget box and start looking, get another small button. And we're going to click on this and we're going to drag it over to our reference line. Now I know this button is going to be a little longer, or it may be a little longer. So instead of leaving it here where it's aligning to the top text, I'm going to move it to the left just to break that the alignment reference line. That way I know it's not going to be forced to stay that same size when I want to change it, and let it go. Now, these buttons are considered right now what they call wrap content. The more letters and words you put in a button, the bigger it grows. That's why this button is this size. I didn't tell it to be this size. It just had to be big enough. It knew it had to be big enough to make the button big enough to take those 2 words side by side together. This one says it's only button. It just kept it this small size. So of course, we're going to change the text. So let's go back to the property boxes. It's selected, and we can see now. First, we're going to notice the ID button. It says button 2. Remember, you can write this down. We're going to need it later on, or I'll refer back to this page or in a page like it, where we can find out what the reference ID numbers are. And we're going to change what the text. So we go down 4 boxes. There's the text box. It takes a string because it says add string button launch. Or it's using the button launch. For some reason, it's referencing button launch. It goes haywire sometimes like that. I don't know why. It should just say exit or button exit, but don't worry about it. It's just a technical error. For some reason, it incorporated the button launch text, but yet if you look at the screen, it just says button. So it just weird things happen. Don't panic. Just click on it. We're going to delete it anyways. Hit delete. You go to the end of the box. You get the 3 boxes with the 3 dots in it. The 1 box with 3 dots in it. Double click on it. Brings in the resources. You want to use the exit button. Of course, you haven't created that string yet, so go back to the bottom like we did before and click new string. In the string box, you're going to name it capital X. That's the value what it's going to be shown on the screen, and it's going to be called exit, and we're going to call this the button underscore exit. So we know this string belongs to the button that has the exit word on it. Now we hit OK. If you go back to the resource boxes, you see the third one from the top, the button exit string has been created. You go to the bottom, hit OK. And now when you look at the work area, you see that exits the word in there. You go back to the text. Okay, for some reason it went down here. That's okay. It should have been here both. I don't know why. Sometimes it works on both or just one. If it's accepted up there, that's fine. If it's accepted down here, that's fine too. I don't know. It did it before. This is like the second time I did this. It's going different somehow. It's going haywire. I don't know why, but hey, look, it works. Let's not bother it. So now we have the exit button. But if you know, let's look at the work section. It's kind of small, and we have no other words to put in there. So how are we going to make this longer? It's a string. Well, if you go to the property boxes again, you go to the bottom, and you start scrolling down, look for something called minimum width. And here's the minimum width box near the bottom right here. If you click on there, it's going to say, okay, what's the minimum width? Well, I know what the minimum width is because I've done this before, but you could play with it. I'm going to put 106. And as you look at the hint box that jumped up, it has DP because it's saying this is the only thing you can put in there. So click on that, double click on that, and now it says 106 DP. If you look at the work area, you notice that the button did expand. It has a reference to be wrap content, but by saying we want the minimum width to be at least is 106, it makes it at least that. Even if you don't have enough letters to make it that long, it makes it that. So now what you do is, it looks good. You want to align it to the right. Just click on it and drag it in the work area. Drag it to the right till you get close to the edge so it could look like your launch button. Let it go. It looks good. It can be put a little bit more. So click on it again and slide it to the edge again. Let's go here. Let it go. And that looks pretty good. Let's click on the body, get all these reference alignment lines out the way. And that looks about right. It might be, looks pretty good. So, okay, now we got a launch button and we got an exit button. The launch button looks maybe a little smaller, but it's good enough for now. If you want to increase it, all you gotta do is click on the box and come over here, click on it, and then just increase it by, I think, just 7. Hit enter. Go back to the box, and you can see, that's about right. Say 107. If you want to decrease it, you can go down again, and that's all you had to do. And now your box, your thing looks pretty good. That's pretty much all we needed to do. We created the box. Now let's go down here. Let's go back to the property box again. Oh, it kind of moved away. But let's look at something went wrong here. Oh, we're looking at the body. Let's click on make sure we got the exit box clicked on, as you see. And now let's look at the minimum width. And it's up here, 107. So, okay, that's good. Let's click on the body again. I just want to check something. Everything's fine. Let's look at the XML code. Welcome Screen XML tab in the bottom. Click on that. And as you can see, this is everything that we change. It's not a lot, and a lot of it seems self-explanatory. Layout, highlight. This is the second button. As you notice, remember the reference buttons I told you to remember about? Here, this is somewhere you can see the reference button too. Again, we're going to need that for later on because we need to reference this when we start writing the method for these buttons. And you notice a couple of things, this is all brand new button, and we put it in here. Here's the first button up here. Here's the second button. There's the reference for the button that we need. And as you can see, most of this, like minimum width, is here. Here's the string for the text. There's no warning sign, so that means we did it the way the program wants, and it's perfect. Again, you can get a book and read all this, and you can actually type all this by hand if you know what you're doing. But we don't, so we use the graphical layout. Let's click on the graphical layout tab again. And here we are. Everything looks perfect. Again, you can use plain text for some things, and other things you probably need strings. You know how to make a string, how to click and drag buttons over to this area. You know how to change the background color. You know how to select something and look at the property boxes here on the right to make sure you know that this is the ID says textbook view 1, and so this is all for the text view. And then the hexadecimal color system to get the color. And so right here, we're back on this page. We're done. Part 1 and 2 was on how to create the welcome screen for the welcome screen tutorial. Part 3 is how to start changing a few things. As a matter of fact, I noticed a few things I could change right now. One thing I wanted to change, well, we'll do that for another tutorial. Right now, we're just going to move on and end this tutorial right here. And thank you for listening for 2, and I'll see you on tutorial 3.